The tour boat pulled away from the dock at 8:15 in the morning. 5 cousins stepped aboard, ages 11 to 17, and the operator wrote their names on a clipboard. The lake was calm. The sky was overcast. 25 years later, a county diver found a piece of rope at the bottom of that same lake, and tied to it was a small plastic ID tag. The tag had one cousin's name written in marker, and below it a date, 1 day after the boat tour. The oldest cousin carried a small backpack. The second oldest wore a faded blue windbreaker. The middle cousin had a disposable camera hanging from a lanyard. The youngest two shared a generic baseball cap. One wore it forward, the other backward. The operator counted 5 boarding passes and checked them against the list. He looked at the cousins and nodded. The boat's engine started. 3 questions opened that morning and stayed open for 25 years. Why did the ID tag show a date 1 day later? Did all 5 cousins leave the boat when it docked? And why did that rope spend a quarter century underwater? The tour was scheduled for 90 minutes. The boat would circle the lake's north end, pass a small island, then return to the main dock. It was a route the operator had run 600 times. Parents had paid in advance. The forecast promised no rain until evening. The cousins sat near the stern, and the oldest one unfolded a generic map of the lake. The clock on the dock read 8:17. If the cousins did not return home by 11:30, the family had agreed to call authorities, a safety rule for all lake trips. By 8:45, the boat was halfway around the route. A passenger later told a county clerk she remembered the 5 cousins moving toward the bow. She said the oldest one was pointing at something in the water. She said the middle cousin raised the disposable camera. She said the 2 youngest were leaning over the rail. She did not hear them speak. The boat continued. At 9:12, the operator slowed near the island. A fisherman in a small aluminum boat was anchored 30 feet from shore. He waved. The operator waved back. The fisherman later told a ranger he saw 5 young people on the stern, not the bow. He said one of them was wearing a blue windbreaker. He said another was holding a map. He said he did not see a disposable camera. The ranger wrote it down, but did not follow up. The details sat in a file for 2 decades. The boat docked at 9:43. The operator tied off and opened the gate. Passengers filed out. He checked his clipboard. 17 names total. He counted heads as they stepped onto the dock. He reached 17. He did not count again. A county transit log shows a van picked up a group of 12 people at 9:50. The log does not name individuals. The 5 cousins were expected home by 11:30. They did not arrive. A family member called the county sheriff at 1:15 in the afternoon, nearly 2 hours past the agreed deadline. The dispatcher recorded the call. The dispatcher asked if the cousins had phones. The family member said no. The dispatcher asked where they were last seen. The family member said the lake tour. The dispatcher said someone would check the dock. A deputy arrived at 2:06. He spoke to the boat operator. The operator said he counted 17 passengers off. The deputy asked if he remembered 5 young people. The operator said he remembered a blue windbreaker. The deputy took notes and returned to his vehicle. At 3:30, a search team walked the shoreline near the main dock. They found a baseball cap on a bench. It matched the description of the cap the 2 youngest cousins had shared. A volunteer searcher picked it up. Inside the brim was a small ink stain. One of the youngest cousins had a habit of drawing on fabric. The family confirmed it. The cap became evidence. The search expanded. By 6:15 that evening, 12 volunteers were searching the east side of the lake. A ranger checked the island. He found no footprints, no belongings, no signs of recent visitors. The fisherman who had been near the island in the morning was gone. The ranger noted the time and location in his incident log. He radioed back. The search continued until 9:40, when visibility dropped below safe levels. The temperature was 51 degrees. The plan was to resume at first light. The next morning, day 2, a canine unit arrived. The dog was trained to detect scent on fabric. A family member provided a shirt belonging to the oldest cousin. The dog tracked from the dock to a gravel parking area 200 feet south. The dog stopped at a tire mark. A deputy photographed the mark. Lab analysis later showed it was from a generic mid-90s sedan. The tread pattern was common. No further vehicle information was obtained. The dog did not pick up the scent beyond that point. At 10:20, a volunteer found the disposable camera on a fallen log near the North Trail. The camera's frame counter showed 22 exposures remaining. Film inside was developed by a county lab. 19 photos were recovered. Most showed scenery. 3 showed the 5 cousins standing near a trailhead sign. The sign's posted hours were visible, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. The photos were time-stamped by the developer using Film Edge code, standard practice in 1999. But no precise time could be extracted. The camera became part of the evidence file. A local clerk reviewed dock security footage from the morning of the tour. The footage covered the boarding area, but not the entire deck. 5 individuals matching the cousins' descriptions were visible boarding at 8:14. The operator's clipboard was visible. He wrote on it. The footage ended at 8:23 due to a scheduled recording loop. No footage captured the boat's return or the disembarkation. The clerk filed a report. The investigation continued. On day 4, a diver from the County Water Rescue Unit inspected the lake bottom near the dock. Visibility was 11 feet. The diver found 2 anchors, several fishing weights, and a section of rope. The rope was frayed at one end. Attached to the other end was a small plastic tag, white, rectangular, 3 inches by 2 inches. The diver surfaced and placed the tag in an evidence bag. Under a magnifying lens, the tag showed a name written in black marker, the oldest cousin's name. Below it was a date written in the same hand, the day after the boat tour. The tag's handwriting was analyzed. A document examiner compared it to known samples from the oldest cousin's school assignments, a birthday card, a permission slip. The examiner concluded the handwriting on the tag matched the oldest cousin's hand with high confidence. That finding raised a question no one could answer. A theory formed. The boat operator could have miscounted. Perhaps not all 5 cousins disembarked. Perhaps one or more had remained aboard or reboarded without being logged. Investigators reviewed the operator's employment record. He had worked the route for 11 years. He had never reported a miscount. He had never been disciplined. His logbook from that day listed 17 passengers boarding and 17 disembarking. When asked directly, he said he was certain everyone got off. He could not explain the tag. By day 7, search teams had covered 80% of the lake's perimeter. A helicopter with thermal imaging flew 2 passes over the area. No heat signatures were detected. Water temperature was measured at 48 degrees near the surface, 42 degrees at depth. Hypothermia onset in those conditions would occur within 30 to 60 minutes. Survival past the first night was unlikely if the cousins had entered the water the day of the tour. By day 7, that window had closed. Any hope of finding them alive had dropped to near zero. Divers continued grid searches of the lake bottom. On day 9, a retired postal clerk came forward. She said she had been walking her dog near the lake's east boat ramp on the afternoon of the tour. She said she saw a group of young people standing near a parked van. She said one wore a blue windbreaker. She said another was holding a map. She could not recall exact time but estimated between 2 and 3 p.m. She said the van was light-colored, possibly gray or silver. She did not see a license plate. Deputies canvassed the area. No van matching that description was reported in the vicinity. A breakthrough arrived on day 12. A county archivist reviewing old maintenance logs found an entry from the boat operator's supervisor. The entry was dated 2 days after the tour. It read, "Operator reported rope missing from spare anchor kit, unknown when removed, no incident report filed." The archivist forwarded the entry to investigators. The rope recovered by the diver matched the diameter and weave of standard anchor line used by the tour company. The spare kit was inspected. One section of rope was indeed missing. The operator said he had not noticed until inventory check. Investigators now had a timeline problem. The rope was found underwater with a tag dated 1 day after the tour. The operator reported the rope missing 2 days after the tour. That left a window. Sometime between the evening of the tour and the following afternoon, someone had written the tag, attached it to the rope, and placed it in the water. The question was, who? The 5 cousins had not returned home. No other individuals were reported missing. The family could not explain it. On day 15, a local mechanic contacted the sheriff's office. He said a young man had come to his shop 3 days after the tour. The young man asked about tire alignment for a mid-90s sedan. The mechanic remembered because the young man paid in cash and did not leave a name. The mechanic described him as late teens, brown hair, approximately 5'9". The description did not match any of the 5 cousins. The oldest cousin was 17, but had blonde hair and stood over 6 feet. Deputies filed the report, but found no vehicle match. At the 3-week mark, the lead investigator held a press briefing. He stated that 5 individuals had boarded a tour boat and that physical evidence suggested at least one had been alive the day after the tour. He did not release details about the ID tag or the rope. He asked anyone with information to contact the sheriff's office. The briefing was covered by 2 local papers and 1 regional TV station. No new tips came in the following week. A volunteer searcher returned to the North Trail on day 23. She was retracing her earlier path. Near the trailhead sign, she found a small scrap of fabric caught on a low branch. The fabric was medium blue, consistent with windbreaker material. Lab analysis matched it to synthetic nylon, commonly used in 1990s outerwear. The second oldest cousin had been wearing a blue windbreaker the morning of the tour. The fabric was added to evidence. The trail was searched again. Nothing further was found. On day 28, a fisherman reported seeing a plastic cooler floating near the lake's southwest corner. A deputy retrieved it. Inside were 4 unopened soda cans and a folded piece of notebook paper. The paper was damp but legible. It contained a list of 5 names, the 5 cousins, and next to each name, a time 8:15 a.m. At the bottom of the page was a single sentence written in different ink. We made it to the island. No signature. Handwriting analysis could not match it to any of the cousins. The paper's origin remained unknown. The cooler was photographed and placed in evidence storage. By day 35, the official search was scaled back. Volunteers continued weekend patrols. The family hired a private investigator. The investigator reviewed all evidence and interviewed the boat operator a second time. The operator repeated his account. He said he was certain 17 passengers disembarked. He said he did not see anyone reboard. He said the spare rope kit was kept in a storage locker accessible only to staff. The investigator asked if anyone else had access. The operator said a seasonal maintenance worker had a key. The worker was interviewed. He said he had not accessed the locker that week. No further leads emerged. 18 months after the tour, a hiker found a backpack buried under leaves near a trailhead 6 miles west of the lake. Inside was a student ID belonging to the oldest cousin. The ID was expired but intact. Also inside was a small spiral notebook. The notebook contained pages of handwritten notes, math problems, song lyrics, a grocery list. The final page had a single line. Rope in place, check morning. The handwriting matched the oldest cousin's hand. The notebook was logged as evidence. The trail was searched. No other items were found. 3 years later, the boat operator sold his business and moved out of state. He gave a final interview to a county reporter. He said he thought about the 5 cousins every day. He said he wished he had counted more carefully. He said he could not explain the rope or the tag. He said he hoped the families would find peace. The reporter published the interview. The story faded from local news. In 2007, a county diver training in the lake found a second anchor rope section near the island. It was wrapped around a submerged tree stump. One end was tied in a bowline knot, a knot commonly taught in boating safety courses. The rope was measured. It was 8 feet long. Combined with the earlier section recovered from the main dock area, total length matched the spare kit's original rope. The two sections had been cut from the same line. A marine forensics expert examined both ends. The cuts were clean, consistent with a sharp blade. The expert estimated the rope had been underwater for years, possibly since 1999. In 2012, a developer began clearing land for a housing project 2 miles from the lake. A bulldozer operator unearthed a plastic trash bag. Inside were 5 generic windbreakers, different colors, different sizes. One was blue. Each had a name written on the inner tag in marker, the 5 cousins. A contractor called the sheriff. The windbreakers were retrieved and analyzed. Fabric degradation suggested they had been buried for a decade or more. No biological evidence was recovered. The site was excavated further. No human remains were found. By 2015, the case file had grown to 470 pages. It included witness statements, lab reports, photos, maps, and a dozen unsuccessful search logs. A cold case unit reviewed everything. They noted inconsistencies: the boat operator's count, the tag's date, the rope's placement, the windbreaker's burial. They did not form a coherent sequence. The unit concluded the case required either new physical evidence or a credible witness. Neither emerged. In 2019, a podcaster researched the case. She interviewed the fisherman who had been near the island the morning of the tour. He was in his 70s. He said he remembered the blue windbreaker clearly. He said he remembered waving to the boat. He said he had not seen the 5 cousins on the island. He said he left around 10 a.m. and did not return that day. He said he sometimes wondered if he had missed something. The podcaster aired 2 episodes. Listeners sent tips, but none led anywhere. In 2023, 24 years after the tour, a county utility crew was repairing a water line near the lake's south access road. A crew member noticed a small metal box partially buried under gravel. Inside was a laminated photo. The 5 cousins standing in front of the tour boat. On the back, someone had written, "Day 1, complete, meet back here tomorrow." The handwriting did not match any known sample. The photo was turned over to the sheriff. The location was excavated. No other items were found. In early 2024, a retired boat mechanic called the sheriff's office. He said he had serviced the tour boat's engine in the fall of 1999. He said he remembered finding a second disposable camera wedged under a seat cushion during a routine inspection. Weeks after the tour, he said he gave it to the operator. The operator told him it was probably left by a different passenger and never filed a lost item report. The mechanic said he did not think more of it until he saw a recent news story about the case. He described the camera: yellow body, black lens. The operator had passed away in 2022. The mechanic's account could not be verified, and the second camera was never logged into evidence. In June of 2024, a Lake Patrol officer was conducting a routine debris survey. She was working near the lake's northwest inlet. At a depth of 14 feet, she found a second partially buried metal cooler, smaller than the first, with different markings. She brought it to the surface. Inside were 7 generic soda cans. One can had a small piece of paper taped to the bottom. The paper was water damaged, but a few words were legible. "We split 6:40 p.m., meet at the dock." The handwriting was analyzed. It did not match any of the 5 cousins. It did not match any known suspect. The paper was added to evidence. The second cooler was photographed and logged separately from the first. 1 week later, the cold case unit reopened the file. A new detective reviewed every document. She noticed something previous investigators had missed. The ID tag found on the rope showed a date 1 day after the tour. The notebook page found in the backpack said "rope in place, check morning." If the oldest cousin had written both, the sequence suggested a plan: place the rope the day of the tour, check it the following morning, then write the date on the tag. But why? and who else was involved. The detective requested a second handwriting analysis. A forensic linguist compared the tag, the notebook, and the note found in the cooler. The linguist concluded the tag and notebook were written by the oldest cousin. The cooler note was written by someone else, an adult, based on letter formation and pressure patterns. The note's phrasing, "We split," suggested a group. The time, 6:40 p.m., was after the boat had docked and after the cousins were expected home. The detective theorized the cousins had met someone after the tour ended, that someone had written the cooler note, that someone had not come forward. In August of 2024, a woman contacted the sheriff's office. She said her late father had been a seasonal worker at the lake in 1999. She said she found a journal in his belongings. One entry dated the day after the tour read, "Saw 5 kids near the island this morning. Asked if they needed help. They said no. Seemed fine, left them alone." The woman provided the journal. Handwriting experts confirmed it was her father's hand. He had passed away in 2018. He had never reported the sighting. The journal entry placed the 5 cousins alive and near the island. The morning after the tour, exactly when the ID tag was dated. The detective cross-referenced the journal entry with the rope evidence. If the cousins had been near the island the morning after the tour, and if the rope had been placed there, it suggested they had planned to return to the island. But for what purpose, and why leave an ID tag? The detective reviewed the tour route. The boat passed the island but did not stop. Access was only by private boat or swimming. The distance from the main dock to the island was approximately 400 yards. Water temperature the day after the tour was 49 degrees. A strong swimmer could cover that distance in 10 to 15 minutes. Hypothermia risk was significant but not immediate. In September, a diver returned to the island area. He searched a 20-foot radius around the submerged tree stump where the second rope section had been found. At a depth of 16 feet, he located a canvas bag. Inside were 5 disposable waterproof pouches, the kind used by kayakers. Each pouch contained a small notebook. Each notebook had a name written on the cover. The 5 cousins. The notebooks were brought to the surface and dried in a controlled environment. Pages were legible. The oldest cousin's notebook contained daily entries starting a week before the tour. The final entry was dated the morning after the tour. It read, "We made it to the island. Water was colder than expected. Rope held, meeting at the dock tonight. If something happens, check the tree stump." The second oldest cousin's notebook had similar entries but ended the same morning. "Hands are numb. We should have brought better gloves." Oldest says the plan is still on. "I hope we make it back." The middle cousin's entry said, "Camera film is almost full. I want to document everything. This is the biggest thing we've ever done." The 2 youngest cousins' notebooks were less detailed. One wrote, "I'm scared but excited. Oldest says it will be worth it." The other wrote, "I don't know if I can swim back. Water is freezing. But we're all together." All 5 notebooks ended on the morning after the tour. None explained what the plan was. None mentioned another person. None indicated distress beyond cold water. The detective reviewed weather records. The morning after the tour saw temperatures drop to 43 degrees. By noon it rose to 51. If the cousins had swum to the island that morning, they would have been cold but functional for several hours. The detective re-interviewed the fisherman. He confirmed he had been near the island the morning after the tour. He confirmed he had seen people on the island, but at a distance. He said he assumed they were campers. He said he did not approach because he did not want to intrude. He said he left around 10:30 a.m. He said if the 5 cousins were there, they were alive and moving when he departed. The fisherman's timeline matched the journal entry from the seasonal worker. Both placed the cousins alive on the island between 9 and 10:30 the morning after the tour. In October, a forensic analyst reviewed the rope evidence again. She noticed something. The bowline knot on the second rope section was tied left-handed. The oldest cousin was right-handed according to family records. The analyst checked the other cousins. The second oldest was left-handed. That meant the second oldest had likely tied the knot. That placed the second oldest on the island handling the rope. The morning after the tour. It supported the notebook entries. It confirmed the cousins had been working together on something involving the rope and the island. The detective theorized a scenario. The 5 cousins had planned to swim to the island after the tour ended. They brought the rope from the boat's spare kit. They used it to mark the location, or to assist in swimming. They placed waterproof pouches with their notebooks near the tree stump as a record. They intended to return to the dock by evening, 6:40 p.m., as noted in the cooler. But something went wrong. They never made it back. The question was what happened between 10:30 a.m., when they were last seen alive, and 6:40 p.m., when they were supposed to meet. A search dog team was brought in. They worked the island for 3 days. On the 3rd day, a dog alerted near a collapsed section of shoreline on the island's east side. Excavation revealed a small cavity beneath the soil. Inside were 5 generic life jackets. Each had a name written in marker, the 5 cousins. The jackets showed no signs of use. They were clean, dry, and folded. The detective concluded the cousins had brought the jackets to the island, but had not worn them. Why bring life jackets and not use them? In November, a marine equipment expert examined the life jackets. He noted they were an older model, common in the mid-90s, with a buoyancy rating of 15 pounds each. He said the jackets were designed for calm water, not open lake swimming. He said a person wearing one could float but would have difficulty swimming efficiently, especially in cold water. He theorized the cousins might have planned to wear the jackets on the return swim but decided against it due to mobility concerns. That would explain why the jackets were found unused. The detective obtained weather data for the afternoon of the day after the tour. At 1:15 p.m., wind speed increased from 12 to 18 miles per hour. By 3 p.m., it reached 23 miles per hour. Wave height on the lake increased from 6 inches to 14 inches. Water temperature dropped from 49 degrees at dawn to 45 degrees by mid-afternoon, a 4-degree decline that reduced safe swim time from 15 minutes to under 10. Visibility remained clear, but water surface became choppy. A swimmer, attempting to cross from the island to the main dock after 1 p.m. would face significantly harder conditions than in the morning. The detective theorized the cousins waited on the island for conditions to improve. Conditions did not improve until after dark. A night swimmer in 40-degree water faces compounded risk. Cold incapacitation occurs faster. Disorientation increases. The main dock had lights, but the island did not. A swimmer leaving the island after dark would need to navigate by distant light. If the cousins attempted the swim after dark, the risk of hypothermia and disorientation was severe. The detective reviewed search records. No night search had been conducted on the island the evening after the tour. By the time searchers reached the island 2 days later, any trace evidence would have been degraded or washed away. In December, a local historian found a newspaper article from 2000. It described a separate incident. 2 college students had attempted to swim from the same island to the dock at dusk. One made it, the other experienced hypothermia, and was rescued by a fishing boat. The rescued student said she lost sight of her friend and panicked. She said the water felt much colder after sunset. She said she did not think she would make it. The article noted the dock was farther than it appeared from the island. The historian forwarded the article to the detective. The detective now had a working theory. The 5 cousins swam to the island the morning after the tour. They left their notebooks in waterproof pouches as a record. They brought life jackets but did not use them. They waited for better conditions to swim back. Conditions worsened. They waited longer. By evening they were overdue. They attempted the swim in the dark, in cold water, without life jackets. Hypothermia set in. Disorientation followed. They did not make it to the dock. They did not make it back to the island. They disappeared in between. In January of 2025, a sonar survey was conducted in the deepest part of the lake, a trench running between the island and the main dock. At a depth of 42 feet, the sonar detected 5 objects clustered together. A dive team descended. Visibility at that depth was poor, less than 3 feet. The lead diver reported finding human remains. Over the next week, all 5 were recovered. Forensic analysis confirmed identity through dental records. All 5 were the missing cousins. The medical examiner concluded cause of death was drowning, complicated by hypothermia. Time of death was estimated to be within 12 to 24 hours after the tour, consistent with the evening or night of the day after. No signs of trauma were found. No indication of foul play. The examiner noted the bodies were found close together, suggesting they had stayed as a group until the end. One cousin's hand was found grasping another's jacket. The examiner called it a tragedy of miscalculation and environmental conditions. The family held a private service in February. They released a statement thanking investigators, volunteers, and the community. They said the cousins had been adventurous and close-knit. They said the cousins had likely been trying to create a memory, not anticipating the danger. They said they found some peace in knowing the cousins had been together. They asked for privacy. The case was officially closed. A final report noted the following. The cousins had taken a section of rope from the tour boat. They had used it to assist in reaching the island. They had left their notebooks as evidence of the journey. They had planned to return by evening. Wind and cold had worked against them. Their attempt to swim back in the dark had ended in the deep trench. The ID tag found on the rope had been the oldest cousin's way of marking the date they reached the island, a timestamp of their achievement. It became a marker of their last day. The boat operator's daughter released a statement in March. She said her father had carried guilt for years. She said he wondered if a more careful count could have made a difference. She said the family now understood. The cousins had left the boat as planned, and that the operator had not failed in his duty. She said her father would have been relieved to know the truth. She thanked the detective for not giving up. The lake remains open. The island is accessible by permit. A small plaque was placed near the main dock in April. It lists 5 names and a single date. No other details. The tour company no longer operates. The boat was sold and repurposed. The spare rope kit was donated to a maritime museum. The disposable camera, the notebooks, the life jackets, and the ID tag remain in county evidence storage. One question lingers in the final report. If the cousins knew the risk, if they felt the cold that morning, if they saw the wind pick up that afternoon, why did they decide to swim back in the dark instead of waiting until the next morning? The notebooks do not say. The evidence does not explain. The detective wrote in her closing summary, "Sometimes young people believe they are stronger than conditions allow. Sometimes the desire to get home outweighs the logic of waiting. We may never know their exact reasoning, only that they made a choice together and it cost them everything."